We're going to make authentic South African milk tart. We need ingredients for the crust and then ingredients for the custard or the milk part. So we need a 1/4 pound butter, which is 4 ounces. Usually that, if you buy a pound of butter, it's 1 stick. We need a 1/2 cup of sugar. We need 2 cups of flour, salt, and then the baking powder, and that will be the crust. And then for the filling, we'll need 4.5 cups of whole milk, 2 tablespoons of flour, 2 tablespoons of cornstarch, a 1/4 cup of sugar, 4 eggs, 1.5 ounces of butter, and some vanilla essence, which I have here. So what I'm going to do is show you how to make the crust with minimal equipment, so you can do it without any beaters. What we need is softened butter, and usually what I do is when I preheat my oven, because we'll need to preheat the oven, it needs to be preheated to 400 degrees. Right on top of the oven I will put my butter for a little bit so that it's all nice and melted. Okay. We also need 2 pie pans. This makes 2 milk tarts, and I will just use recycled pie pans here. So we need 1/4 pound of butter, and what we're going to do is cream this with the egg. So I have 1 egg here, and when you cream it, if you use a blender, you can just blend it in your blender, but since I'm going to do it without any equipment, I'm going to use either a spoon and a whisk, and then just start to cream it this way, and then add sugar, which is 1/2 cup of sugar. Normally you will take your sugar here and level it off, and that would be your sugar. Nice and smooth and fluffy. And then we're going to add the dry ingredients, but the dry ingredients need to be sifted. If you don't have a sieve, all you can do is put in your dry ingredients and fluff it up, so it'll incorporate some air as well as mix the ingredients. So we will need 2 cups of flour. So since I do have a sifter, I'm going to just go ahead and level off the flour. I need 2 cups of that. They say a pinch of salt, it's about 1/4 teaspoon. So I'm going to just do a little 1/4 teaspoon here. 1 teaspoon of baking powder. Okay, and I'm going to sieve it. So if you don't have a sieve, all you can do is take your dry ingredients and mix it and incorporate some air. Okay. Now what we're going to do is actually make the crust. So we have the creamed butter, egg, and sugar here, and we're going to add the flour to it. So I'm going to add the flour here. Slowly blend it. I probably need a bigger bowl, so I'm going to just turn it into this bowl here. And it's going to look really crumbly. Just try to get as much of it incorporated, and then what we're going to end up doing is pressing this into the pie pan. You will need your hands with this, so make sure that your hands are clean, and you can actually feel it. It should be really soft here. Okay. Okay, Okay, so now I'm going to add this to the pie pans. Two of them. And basically what I'm going to do is just split it in two. Half of it will go here. And the other half will go here. About the same amount. And then from here on, you're pretty much starting from the center and you're pressing. And as you press, you're going to make your way out to the edges. Okay? And then I use my thumb on my left hand and I'll just squish it so that it becomes the top part of the crust. This is probably the most time-consuming part of the milk tart. But you want to have a little thick part of the crust here, and make sure that right in the corner crease here, it's not too thick. If your crust is really thin on the top, it tends to burn. So we're going to try to make sure that we have a thicker part here. So we just keep working this little corner and making a nice, decent edge. Okay. See how it's getting a little thicker here on the top? So keep doing that, pushing it from the center, from the edge right there. Okay. Oh, I forgot to say we actually do need cinnamon for the top of the milk tart. That's like the key. Okay, so that is the crust. Let's do the other one. Now we have the crust and all the edges are done, and we're going to put it in a 400-degree Fahrenheit oven for 10 minutes just to cook the crust. Okay, now we're going to do the filling, the milk part. We need 4.5 cups of whole milk. So I'm going to pour, this is 2. 4 and a half. Okay, 4.5 cups of whole milk. And turn that on. And then 1.5 ounces of butter, which is just a little less than a quarter. So not that much. Okay. All right. I use the same spoon that I was using before. It has some of the flour, but that's all right. And I'm going to just let that warm up a bit. And then what I'm going to do is make the custard. So, right, for the egg part, the custard, we need 4 eggs, which we're going to have to beat. And I'm still going to use the same whisk that I had used earlier for the crust, so no need to clean it up because we just need all those ingredients in the custard anyway. So we'll have 4. So we'll just beat this up while our milk is warming up, and then we're going to add the dry ingredients, which is 1/2 cup of sugar. Sugar again. a sieve. So I'm going to do 1/2 cup of sugar, and then there's going to be 2 tablespoons of cornstarch and 2 tablespoons of flour. One, 2 tablespoons of flour. 1, 2. Okay. And I'll just mix this up. Until it's all nice and smooth. Okay, now what we're going to have to do is cook the egg but not make it curdle. So the way you need to do that is slowly inject your warm milk liquid. Alright, now that the milk is a little warm, we're going to add the milk mixture just a little bit into our egg. Just a little bit here. And then okay, and once we've added that, we're going to slowly pour in the egg mixture back into the milk. And as it thickens, we're not going to stray from the milk mixture, but we do need to add our teaspoon of vanilla. So I'm going to add a teaspoon of vanilla. And actually I'm going to use my now what we need to do is just keep stirring this until it starts to thicken. And that's the timer for our crust. So we're going to get our crust taken out. And this is what our crust is going to look like. It's a little brown on the edges, but then it's still soft there. Okay. So back to stirring our custard. Okay, you're cooking this on medium-low heat, not high heat. So let me just show you. It's about that flame. And you can see that it's starting to thicken, but you want to constantly stir it, else it will go lumpy. Unless you like lumpy custard. Now you can see that it is getting thicker. It's still not quite right, but you can actually feel it thickening as you stir. Once you pour it into the pie pans and it cools off, it will thicken further, but you do want it to have a good custard consistency. Not quite there yet. You can see. You feel like there's a little more resistance as you stir. Okay, this is about the consistency you want. That's definitely a lot thicker. That's still enough to be able to be poured. So I'm going to pour it into our pie crust now. First. Okay. Put that over here. Put that here. Second one. Okay. And then what we're going to do is sprinkle our cinnamon. So I usually use a sieve and sprinkle cinnamon on it like that. And here's the other one. Okay. And there you have it. 2 authentic South African milk tarts.